coming off the school's first Final Four appearance, things are only getting better on the hardwood for the Crimson Tide. Nate Oates locked in a long-term deal to be in Tuscaloosa. Tip the cap to Greg Byrne if you're an Alabama fan. But Nate Oates, I wouldn't say he spurned Kentucky. Never really got that far down the road, but it was a concern enough where he wanted probably some more money for his assistants, wanted some more money in the NIL budget, war chest, whatever you want to call it in today's term for the pay-for-play people out there. But things have never been better in basketball in Tuscaloosa right now. Again, coming off the school's first Final Four appearance, you got a young coach. It looks like he's going to be locked in, at least in the college level at Alabama for a long time. Maybe test NBA waters. Who knows about that? But for right now, you couldn't be more fired up if you're an Alabama basketball fan. And it already looks like the Tide is making roster moves for another Final Four run in 2024, 2025. If you're an Alabama fan, are you already starting to book your tickets to San Antonio next year? I'm your host here, Dave Shumate, coming at you here at the SEC Unfiltered platform here. Before we get started, though, don't forget about our guys over there at RHOBACK. Go to RHOBACK.com, use the code SECU for 20% off your first purchase. Shorts, T-shirts, polos, quarter zips, joggers, anything. I mean, you can go start shopping for your winter gear right now because you maybe get some sales. Maybe you're starting, you have some trips lined up in June and July, need some shorts, whatever it is. RHOBACK's your place to go do it, guys. RHOBACK is your place to go do it. But back to the Alabama basketball roster here. Again, like I mentioned, I can't imagine there's been a much better time to be an Alabama basketball fan than there's been here. Maybe the Wimp Sanderson days, Mark Gottfried had its heydays, but nothing like the momentum you have coming off your first Final Four appearance. And after what they've kind of done with their roster so far since the season ended about a month ago, Alabama looks to be in good shape to maybe repeat that Final Four run. I mean, it's been a good mixture of retention, keeping guys like Grant Nelson, keeping guys like Latrell Wrightsell. You're keeping, I know you lost Rylan Griffin, but you're keeping some guys like Mo Diabate who could be a role guy for you. I mean, we'll talk about that roster here in a minute, but they've also bring in some much needed pieces to an already good lineup. On Sunday, the best center, 5, rim protector, whatever you want to call it, in the portal from Rutgers. Clifford Amoriuri committed to Nate Oates and Alabama over North Carolina. Alabama got North Carolina in the Sweet 16, got him in the PK tournament the year before that, got him for Jaron Stevenson, and beat him for Clifford Amoriuri, like I mentioned. Carolina's just getting taken to the woodshed by Alabama right now. I mean, I'm kidding some. I know the traditions. I know the Trifficates, but just poking fun a little bit out there. But Alabama's had their fair share of success here recently over the Tar Heels. But let's go to that roster. Let's specifically look at the Crimson Tide roster as we stand right now. This is an Excel sheet keeping up with the college basketball rosters across the country from our guy Backdoor Sports. Thought I'd use his template there. Let's go through it right here. This is in order of eligibility. So right here, you got Latrell Wrightsell. I mentioned he was retained one of the best three-point shooters in the country. When he scored double digits, Alabama was undefeated last year, over 40% three-point shooter. Had some concussion issues that made him be limited towards the back half of the season. Grant Nelson, one of the bigger guys to come back in college basketball this year, played out of position, played the 5 a lot because Alabama lost Charles Bediako late. They weren't going to let that happen this year. They were not going to let that happen this year. That's why they got Big Clifford. Chris Youngblood coming over from South Florida, a Tuscaloosa native, grad guy. Last year was co-AAC player of the year. He created his own shot, scored all 3 levels, great defender, has some mass. You can tell he's a physically developed guy that's played a lot of college basketball. Here we go, center, 5-spot, rim protector, Cliff Amoriuri coming over from Rutgers. Then you got Houston Millett, the guard they brought in from Pepperdine. Another guy shot over 40% from 3. I think averaged about 14 points a game last year. He committed to Alabama for the NCAA, I think the week the NCAA tournament was starting. So he was already in, another senior there. Jaron Stevenson declared for the NBA draft, didn't get an NBA combine draft invite. Got a G League invite, I do believe. But him and Mark Sears, we'll talk Mark Sears in just a minute, have till May 29th to remove their name from the NBA draft. So you got you got about 3 weeks left, just over 3 weeks. But still, I counted Jaron Stevenson because he didn't get that NBA combine event. I expect him to be back. And I think, honestly, he probably has the most NBA he had the most NBA upside of anybody on Alabama's team last year. Call me crazy, but I think Jaron Stevenson, you saw his ability in that Elite 8 game against Clemson. Guy only turned 18 right when he got on campus. One of the young bucks is another big get I mentioned against North Carolina in the recruiting. On the recruiting side of things, both parents went to North Carolina. So that was a big piece. He should be back. I mentioned Mo Diabate. I didn't think he would because he's kind of that weird fit 6'8" guy, plays like a 4, gets kind of those blue-collar points Alabama's all about. You liked Mo Diabate from a role standpoint. What will be his role in 24-25? Because this roster is getting loaded here. Front court's really not going to be a concern, and that's really what he plays at, but he's got a little bit of a tweener. I mean, people remember him in that game against Grand Canyon. Alabama may not win that game if it's not for Mo Diabate getting a couple of those rebounds, getting an and one to go to the free throw line. Auburn, their point guard, Aiden Holloway, transfers to Alabama. Different scenic view. There's some rumors out there, maybe lack some confidence. Shooting efficiency wasn't great, but I think Nate Oates' system will fit him better. We'll see what Mark Sears does here. Still mentioned like he has until May 29th. Aiden Holloway could be getting the nod as the starter if Mark Sears decides to stay in the NBA draft. If not, he'll probably get those number 2 spots. Then Alabama's freshman class they signed. It was a number 2 signing class in the country. I mean, outside of what they've already done damage-wise in the transfer portal. They got Darion Reed, him and his teammate Aiden Sherrell coming over, 2 McDonald's All-Americans come from prolific prep. I could see Darion Reed getting the starting rotation. I'll talk about that here in a minute. But Aiden Sherrell should get that number 2 spot at the 5 spot, rim protector spot behind Clifford Amoriuri. Aiden Sherrell, McDonald's All-American himself, brings another shot-blocking dynamic that Alabama really missed last year. LeVarian Philon, been committed to Auburn, decommitted from Kansas, originally from Mobile, Baker High School, I do believe. He committed to Alabama, decommitted from Kansas, I think, with the understanding he was probably – going to be a backup behind Aiden Holloway no matter what, and maybe he gets pushed down even – those minutes get limited even more if Mark Sears decides to come back, because Mark Sears will be playing that 1 spot unless they move him a little bit off the ball at times. That'd be a little bit of a smaller lineup. Then Nas Cunningham coming over to the freshman. He'll be a forward. I'm interested to see his minutes as well. But the guy that we got to be circled here, and I think Backdoor Sports did a phenomenal job with this Excel sheet here, is we have Mark Sears here, likely NBA entrant here. People are starting to think he's going to come back. And Alabama's at a 12 scholarship count right now. You get 13. So they're holding that last spot for Mark Sears. If Mark Sears were to come back, here is the starting lineup for me right here. I think Mark Sears at the 1 spot. I think you'd have Chris Youngblood at the 2. Call me crazy. I mentioned it earlier. I think you have Darion Reed, the true freshman McDonald's All-American, highest signee in Alabama's class from prolific prep. I think he'd be at that 3 spot. Grant Nelson goes to his natural 4 spot for you right there, which I think will only benefit him. Another year in college basketball. He gets a whole summer off-season conditioning program and a strength and conditioning program. Remember, he didn't have that last year because he took so long with his decision between Alabama and Arkansas. So I think that only fits him more. I don't see a lot of 4s being able to cover Grant Nelson. This will be Cliff Amoriuri coming to Alabama. Besides it benefiting Alabama and Cliff in general, individually it benefits Grant Nelson benefits more than anyone else individually. It'll only help him play his true spot. And then speaking of Cliff Amoriuri, he will play that 5 spot. I think Latrell Wright sells better off that bench. Who knows? Maybe his concussive stuff's lingering. I know he's had a lot, even going back to his Cal State Fullerton days. So maybe they're limiting on that. I think they like him as that kind of like microwave offense right off the bench. Also throwing Houston Millette from that standpoint. Jaron Stevenson, Aiden Holloway, that number 2 spot. Where does Mo Diabate fit? I think there's a role for him because he gets those blue collar points, those tough points, rebounds, charges, on the help side, defense, stuff like that. Stats that you don't find in the box score. Then I think you got Aiden Sherrell who could develop by the end of the year, being another solid rim protector. 5 guy for him as well. And it'll be interesting to see how these LeVarian Philon and Nas Cunningham kind of develop from that standpoint. But again, there aren't going to be many minutes for everybody once you get the SEC play. But it's a talented roster, 1 through 12 already. But if Mark Sears decides to come back, and that's the 13th scholarship. Remember last year, Alabama didn't use all 13. They brought in an early enrollee, put him on scholarship late. But if Alabama uses all 13 and Mark Sears is back and that's their starting 5, Alabama's probably preseason number 1. It's probably right now down to them in Kansas. And again, that doesn't mean anything right now in early May. Or I think John Fanta, who is a phenomenal basketball writer for the Field of 68, covers the Big East well. He picked Arkansas as his preseason champion this past year. Arkansas didn't even make the NCAA tournament, played in the first day on Sad Wednesday, the SEC tournament, one of the biggest disappointments in college basketball. The biggest disappointment in college basketball this year. So that doesn't mean anything, But man, is the University of Alabama basketball program rolling right now. Mark Sears, remember him and technically Jaron Stevenson, even though I predict Stevenson to be back, they have till May 29th to remove their name from the NBA draft. Expectation is Alabama's worked some things out NIL-wise. He grew up a big Alabama fan. Remember, he's from Muscle Shoals. So he comes back. You're looking at a preseason number 1, worst preseason number 2 team and the favorite in the SEC heading into 2024 or 2025, which, man, what a phenomenal basketball roster. I mean, really the only guy you really lose that they didn't – I wouldn't say you didn't upgrade. You just don't know what – you probably – if you ask Nate Oates who you'd like to have back would be Rylan Griffin. But other than that, you upgraded at every position, if not that position as well. But you were deep across the board. You brought in a top 3 portal class, a top 3 high school class, and you retained, especially if you get Mark Sears back, Mark Sears and Grant Nelson, who both were on fire at the end of last year. It's rolling. Basketball, hardwood, it's rolling in Tuscaloosa right now. Nate Oates, really outside of those blue bloods, outside of UConn, Alabama's probably the next best team right now in college basketball. The Alabama, UConn, and Baylor are the 3 best basketball programs outside your non-traditional blue bloods, like Duke, North Carolina, teams like that, and Kansas and stuff like that. But the next 3 right in today's time right now, Baylor, Alabama, and definitely UConn, obviously. And UConn is in that blue. I'm going to throw them in the blue blood conversation. They're officially a blue blood. So take them out. I think they're automatically in the Duke, North Carolina, Kansas range and Kentucky range. I think the new kind of school guys that kind of have it figured out, and Scott Drew and Nate Oates, are Alabama and Baylor. But specifically for the SEC, Alabama is rolling. They get Mark Sears. Look out, college basketball. I'm telling you, look out. But again, I'm your host, Dave Shumate, coming at you here at the SEC Unfiltered platform. All things SEC, 24/7, 365. Hit that notification bell. You do not want to miss any of it. You have a fantastic day.